Good evening from the Tri-State WX Weather Center. We just want to do a little quick reflection back on the July 30th tornado, the EF-1 that went through the far east side of Evansville and into Newburgh on that Tuesday evening. So about a little over a week ago. So we're going to go back and look at some radar images, kind of explain to you what happened, how that tornado evolved, and all that. And then we'll kind of look at some additional radar images here shortly. But just to put it all together in perspective, we had quite a few outflow boundaries from these different complexes of thunderstorms that developed. So we had one outflow boundary that was going across Wayne, Edwards, Wabash, Gibson, back into extreme northwestern Pike and Knox County. And yeah, another outflow boundary that was just kind of meandering here across Posey and Vanderburgh County. You also had a stalled boundary that pretty much went here from southern Gibson County back into western Warwick County, which that one will come into play here in a little bit. So just kind of remember this boundary right here because it kind of disappears on radar. You don't really see it until that storm kind of interacts with that boundary. And then finally, we have this other outflow boundary that stretched from Wayne County back through White County and into Gallatin County. So you can see where all these outflow boundaries pretty much would eventually come together. And even we mentioned that in our live broadcast that night that we expected some chaos to unfold with all these storms coming to a point or close together. And obviously, those outflow boundaries helped enhance that rotation. That was a 546 image. Now, as we advanced here to almost 6:30, getting pretty close to about time the tornado formed, you can see here on the right hand side of your screen on the velocity side of it, we kind of traced out that outflow boundary, that gust front that pretty much went across northeastern Posey County, northern Vanderburgh, back into Gibson, Pike, and Knox County. Uh, and then on reflectivity and our velocity here, we also traced back that gust front that was going across Posey County and Henderson County. So you can see those two main outflow boundaries, and we still had that one boundary that was laid out across northern Vanderburgh County. So this is kind of the point where these outflow boundaries started to merge together. Um, we'll see here shortly where the third outflow boundary kind of comes into play, and that's kind of when we see once those other two boundaries start interacting with that one, and that's when we really start to see that tornado take off. So at 624, you can see where those outflow boundaries are pretty much stretching from Wadesville back through Darmstadt, across northern Warwick County, just to the west of Selvin, and then back up through Pike County. You can see that enhanced area damaging winds there to the north of Darmstadt. So most likely some 50 to 60-mile-an-hour winds. So if you had some damage up in that area, that was caused by damaging winds. That third outflow boundary that we talked about, it really doesn't show up that well on radar. You kind of have to go back through and look at multiple images and kind of study to see where that boundary's at. But you can see how some storms have developed to the east of that boundary. So we know we still had that boundary sitting right there. So this boundary that's pushing across northern Vanderburgh County, and then we had the one that's pushing across southern Vanderburgh County. So those two are starting to come together, and they're getting ready to meet that third outflow boundary that was stalled out right here. So this is where we start to see stuff get interesting. And then on the next slide, that's when we really start seeing things get going as far as rotation starting to develop near Melody Hill. Again, if you were watching our live stream, we started to mention that we were concerned about something there in Melody Hill. We did have a power flash on our tower cam about this same time, so we knew we had something potentially on the ground. We just couldn't see it. You can kind of see not that rain wrapped at this point, but as we'll move on through our slides here, we'll be able to show you how things really got wrapped up in rain. So you can see that area enhanced damaging winds across northern Vanderburgh County still. Then we kind of zoom in here as we definitely start seeing the rotation increasing. So this is the same radar image, but we zoomed in here near the Melody Hill area. That's where you can see the rotation start to increase. We still had that third boundary here across western Warwick County. You can kind of make it out right there. and then that area of damaging winds just to the northeast of Darmstadt. You can also start seeing a hook develop near Melody Hill that really starts becoming more pronounced here at 632. So you see the hook on reflectivity here. That's definitely a couplet right there. So that's where we had the developing tornado, which was practically on the ground already because we had a debris signature already on radar. Again, this is where that stalled boundary was at across Warwick County. So as it started to interact with that third boundary, we really started to see this rotation develop and this tornado strengthen. So as we move on to the next slide at 635, you can see a pretty tight couplet right there that continues to intensify. That hook that we had on radar a little while ago starting to become wrapped in rain. So again, that's where you can't see the tornado essentially at this point, just because the amount of precipitation wrapping in. Uh, this is pretty much where the tornadoes pretty much butted up right against this third outflow boundary that was right there. And then also we had the TDS on radar, the tornado debris signature there to the west of Chandler, right there on the Warwick Vandenberg County line. So as we continue on at 638, this is when the tornado really starts tightening up. Again, rain wrapped here, getting ready to cross Highway 62 near the Lynch Road Chandler area. Again, we still had debris on radar. You can see that normalized rotation value really increased, so that's almost pushing a 2.0 there. But you can see a pretty tight couplet there. And then here, next slide, this is when we see the tornado at its strongest point. So this would be when the tornado was in the Gorley Place area off Coal Mine Road, and then over there off of Plank Road, Fuquay, back near Castle Elementary, Castle Junior High, and then back to the east where it continued to track towards the Van Park area. But again, reflectivity you can see is completely wrapped. Obviously, we still had debris on radar, very tight couplet. So this is where the strongest point we had as far as the tornado. You can also start to see the rear flank downdraft winds really increase. So after the tornado, you had a prolonged period of damaging winds, and then we also had forward flank winds develop as well. All this stuff will get you tongue tied here. Continue on here. Again, you can see it's rain wrapped. This is essentially where the tornado occludes. So this is Highway 61 here in Warwick County. So just pretty much due north of Yankeetown would be where that circulation is. Again, still have that area of forward flank downdraft winds, rear flank downdraft winds continue as well. Not detecting any more debris, so we know that the tornado is starting to lift. So anything that we have beyond Highway 61, we know is going to be damaging winds because at this point, a little bit of circulation left, but we have two areas of enhanced damaging winds here. Still have that RFD on the backside of where that rotation was at. So that's why we had the continuous wind here in Newburgh after the tornado passed by. And then finally at 651, pretty much a full damaging wind event here from Newburgh all the way back to just to the west of Crisney, Santa Claus, Hatfield area. That's where we had some damaging winds, almost up to 80 miles an hour where these oranges are at as well. So we'll go back here and we'll take a look at the radar from that night. And then you can kind of see how things evolve here and kind of give you a better picture rather than just showing you still pictures here. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. We'll just go with two panel. Take the reflectivity and the winds. But again, you can see these outflow boundaries here pretty much from Fairfield to Carmi. So that's outflow boundary 1. Got a boundary that's here north of Mount Vernon pushing across Posey County. And that curls back up towards the Elberfeld area. This is that third boundary that we were talking about. At that point, it stretched from Fort Branch all the way back down to just north of Yankeetown. Again, that one kind of disappears from the radar, but it's always there. So that's kind of when we see those other two boundaries interact with that third, and that's when we really start to see that tornado spin up. There's another outflow boundary there, pretty much stretching from Sisney back to Albion, Grayville, and that one curls back into Princeton and back up into Knox County. But as you can see, as we move forward in time, we start to see these outflow boundaries come together. So essentially, at this point, we have an outflow boundary ahead of this line of storms, and then the other one pushing across Gibson County into northern Vandenberg and Posey County, which you can kind of make that out better on our velocity image. Um, and then as we continue on, we start to see these two outflow boundaries kind of interact here in northwestern Warwick County. That's when we start to see additional thunderstorms flare up ahead of that line of storms there across northern Vandenberg and northwestern Warwick County. And as those boundaries continue to push to the south, once it comes in contact with that third boundary, we really see stuff flare up right here, and we start to see that hook develop near Melody Hill. That's when we know that we have a tornado on the ground. Obviously, you can see that rotation continues to increase, then dissipates once it pushes into Spencer County. So that's kind of a radar view of what occurred on the 30th of July. Uh, Kind of a lot there, especially with all those boundaries. It takes a lot to keep track of all those boundaries and know where they're at. But when you're in severe weather mode, you got to know where those boundaries are, just because uh, those boundaries that are laid out, once they interact with other boundaries, again, it doesn't take much for those two boundaries to collide with each other and see things start spinning and tornadoes develop. They're quick, they're brief, usually not that significant. Again, this one on radar looked pretty significant, but it just turned out to be a EF-1, which is a good thing. Unfortunately, a lot of the damage was caused by trees falling on houses and cars and stuff like that. So, uh, most of your structural damage was caused by trees, luckily, but it's not something that is good in the long run, just because houses have to be replaced and rebuilt because of those trees falling from that tornado. Well, that's a wrap up there of what happened on July 30th with the EF-1 tornado that moved through uh, eastern Vandenberg County and into Warwick County. Um, Again, we'll continue to study up on stuff, take a look at some other parameters, mostly like mesoanalysis and stuff like that. Just see what we can learn from these events. Thanks for tuning in and have a good night.